All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Remarkable Coach podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pacheco, here with Alice Karolina. Alice is a brand purpose strategist working with emerging thought leaders to make their work deep, potent, and clear so they can actually start changing the world. Alice, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. To just kind of get things going, why don't you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, I have two businesses. On one hand, I'm a brand strategist, as mentioned, and I also I run a movement called the Ethical Move, which is building a standard for ethical marketing. So my stand is pretty clear in the world that I think that businesses should take ownership of, the stuff that we do in the world and how to change it and what we can do with it. And I do that in sort of whatever facet I can do in terms of work. Yeah.
Love it. So this is not something that this is something that I've shared with you already, but for our listeners' sake, this is selfishly a conversation that I've been looking forward to quite a bit because, like Alice, I'm also have a small obsession with branding and messaging and making sure that your purpose is clear. Because if that's clear for you, it's going to be clear for your clients, your prospects, your customers, whatever you call them. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited about this. Alice, tell us why brand purpose?
Why branding?
Yeah.
Um, because I believe it is sort of the biggest vessel I could find to work on purpose and values and what you really stand for in the world and where you're going, your big vision. Um, People call it mission sometimes. Um, I think that it is just basically, I was looking for the biggest container I could find to work on all of these things because I feel like no, I don't just feel like I know this. It is such internal work. It's so part of our self-development and so part of our, every single part of our business is impacted and influenced by our brand and the other way around. I think that there are two strands of the same DNA. So to me, I feel like if you don't if you work on your business, you work on your brand and vice versa. So because I'm not a business strategist and I don't intend to be, branding and messaging and like actually honing your story and being really sort of truthfully inside within yourself and authentic, that to me, branding is the perfect vessel for that.
Love it. I love it. What does what does working with you look like?
Very specifically, it's coming at me with this at a funny time because right now, what it looks like is one-on-one services where I work with people in individual sessions, either one hour or 90 minutes, I should say, or a whole day, or over 4 months. I am developing a new product though, or a new service. I don't know exactly what the form of it is going to be, but the idea being that I'm starting to understand how much we need to become our own expert in our branding, and
Mhm.
that branding never stops, and it's never something that ever leaves you unless you leave your work, I guess.
Mhm.
And so I'm starting to work on branding as a practice
Mhm.
and what that could look like and how that could become potentially some sort of either a product or I don't know. I'm also looking to all of my friends to tell me what it should be, but the idea being behind it that I want to build sort of a system of prompts and a framework for people to be able to develop their own inner voice in a
Mhm.
way that is not so they can really stand in their own on their own ground. And I don't think they need an expert for that. It's good to have outside opinion, which is why I still will offer my sessions because I feel like that's really important to have
Mhm.
someone look in from the outside, as we all know. But I also think that a lot of confusion happens because we listen too much to the outside and we rely
Mhm.
too much on our experts and we rely too much on our gurus to tell us what to think and where to go. And I think that, again, branding is a perfect vessel for that deeper inner truth and that knowing and that building that confidence within oneself. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
So you work, at least as of today, you work typically one-on-one is kind of like as a in a consultancy role kind of thing.
Absolutely. A strategist for
Okay,
sure. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And then you're working on building out frameworks and potentially scaling that. Are you going to be looking at doing like, I don't know, like group sessions and that sort of thing with these frameworks or?
Maybe. Potentially. I'm in this like, when the gray matter is
Huh?
like doing the work when you don't really have a form or a shape yet. What I know for sure is I'm learning a lot from the ethical move about doing no harm and being inclusive and having a really creating a safe space. And I want to learn a lot more about that before I jump into group work, because I find that is it can be highly problematic if you don't have that under your belt, or at least know what you're about and understand how to handle that kind of environment. I do think that I might have an old storyline in my head that I just don't do group work, and I need to sort of like look through that as well. Speaking to coaches, of course, I'm sure that's a known story somewhere. Um, and then I'm also thinking it might just be a sort of an online resource. Potentially Notion resource library, potentially an ebook, potentially a few audio sessions, potentially, I don't know what that looks like. But
Well, but
the
you're
framework
deep in.
exists. I've already built the framework for my one-on-one service because I typically give a Notion framework to my clients to build out and work with me so they have something to continue working on. Like I've always worked this way, kind of, for them to be able to keep building. Now I just want to make it into more of a of an accessible piece, because I also know that my pricing will not be able to be matched by anyone uh, that is just starting out, for example, or is having like those like moments in their business where they are not making an income because they have to go deep and understand what's going on. So I really want to be able to be in those gaps as well. So yeah,
Yeah, it sounds. I call it the nebula. You're when you're doing the gray matter work and you can't think. You're deep in the
that's so
nebula.
good.
You're deep in the nebula. Something's
Precisely,
gonna come out of it. You
precisely.
don't know what it is.
No idea what it's going to look like, but it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about your clients. Who do you typically work with? Who do you typically help out with this kind of stuff?
Well, it's shifted over the years, of course. I, as many, I feel like you niche in and then you niche out again, and then you niche in and then you move. But one thing that has been universally true is that I work with what I'm currently calling thought leaders,
Mhm.
people who have their own message and their own stand and their own sort of being in the world that is not, has not been done before, or they're reaching into that sphere. So it usually is somewhere on that spectrum of like either becoming a thought leader and like having their own thoughts and needing to find a way to make it into a thing and how to message it and gain confidence and understand what it really means,
Mhm.
and find the right words for it. Um, or I work with, I mean, and then there's the whole spectrum as well of like people who actually have their thought leadership well established. Like they don't need to establish authority, they don't need to do any of that anymore, but they do have a lot of like sort of like satellite products and projects and things that they all keep, that have coalesced over the years, and they need help basically like cleaning it up and making sure that the right things are sticking with them, and sort of channeling inwards and not having so many different uh, sort of pieces to their business disorganized, that makes gives the feeling of kind of muddy water, even though there's no muddy water at all that I could see. But typically for the experience is that you're like, okay, so I know what I'm about, but I feel like I'm still a little vague. So
Sure.
it's
You're looking
mainly
at
it's just yeah.
you're looking at like brand consistency and brand and maintaining that brand reputation for clients like that.
Absolutely.
Sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've come away from the idea of needing sort of a signature offer or a signature program per se. I feel like what I'm coming to is this like signature stand, or this really like, your core message being the driving force of whatever you're creating, so that your products, your services, your offerings can become whatever they want to be over the course of time. They evolve anyways. So we might as well get on board with that sort of like natural tendency to grow and to shift and change, and for lack of a better word, because I kind of hate it, pivot.
Uh-huh.
Every time you pivot, you have a little meltdown that you feel like everything's going to go to shambles and that you have to break everything down. But if you have your sort of signature core stand, then none of that really matters. Then you can just say, oh, right now I do one-on-one services, but you know what? I'm going to create a product for this other thing. And it still rests within you.
I think that's beautiful, and I think that's one of the maybe the main reason why it's so important that you said it before that you just when you're thinking about your branding, whether it's a personal brand or a brand for your business. It's really, you need to spend a lot of time maybe journaling and looking inward and thinking about that, because anytime you create a product or something like that, it needs to sit and rest within that brand. And if you haven't defined that for yourself, then I think, yeah, it could, I can see there being complications as you grow, right?
Yeah, and as you message it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the more you the more clear you can become. And I know this is like I feel like this is the everyone's white whale is this idea that you have to, you have to know exactly how to articulate what you do and you have to have your elevator pitch and your thing perfectly written out. But I feel like the more you say it, the more you use it, the more you build it, the more confident you become and the easier it becomes. It's a pretty logical. I think it's science. um, you become better over time the more you use it. So it's almost like a little bit of experimentation as well. So you need to go within and rest within, but don't stay stuck there. Like it doesn't it there comes a point where you have to go out and experiment and
Mhm.
bring your message out and say, okay, well, this is what I'm thinking. So I'm just going to have to say my thoughts and see what, see what comes back, because always staying in your own little hut is also not, as much as we like being hermits. I think, I mean, I do. We do have to test our assumptions every now and then and see what the
Sure.
response is. Otherwise you don't have a business, right? I mean, there is also a point where you need to actually come out with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Do you also, so speaking of, you know, creating products and satellite offers and that sort of thing, do you, when you're working with a client, do you work on, for example, an individual product that they offer? And do you create its own little brand for individual products? Or do you just focus on the person or the business and then everything fits naturally within that? How do you approach
Hmm.
that sort of branding? I know there's a lot of, there's some books out there and a lot of thinkers out there that are into branding that consider, you should brand every product individually.
Ugh, there's so many shoulds and shouldn'ts out there, hey?
Yep.
Honestly, over the course of the years, it's become more and more individualized. Whatever floats your boat, man. Like, I feel like if you have a really cool product that is like the driver of your thing and it's like the core offer and like it fits with you and it's the thing, then let's go from there. Let's take what you have and see what your offer is all about and why it's so important and why you care about it so much and why, like it's such a good experiment then, you have a perfect platform to build on. Um, and ultimately, I do think that there is sort of like an internal piece that, when we were talking about resting within, like there is an internal sort of like, circle that you have or a foundation of some sort that goes beyond any product. But using the product as sort of a means to get there is really interesting. I also think it's really interesting to I have a few clients who are who have so many different things that they want to do. There wouldn't be any point to doing it from there. It's almost like they're kind of also getting tired of their signature offer. They're like, well, it's been my flagship for so long, but I don't actually I've evolved and I want to find new ways of doing things. So there it becomes more a matter of like what is the intrinsic stand and what is the overarching message that you have created. That then will and sometimes you have those elusive moments where it's like, oh my gosh, we have the exact theme and the like system that everything works within and then everything clicks into place. And I'm lucky to say that I've been present to a few of those. I just had one of those yesterday which blew my mind. um, and those are the magical moments, right? But the thing is, it's not necessary for your brand to be succinct, and sometimes the brand is already there. Well, not sometimes, it's actually always the case. The brand is already there, we're just like lifting the lid and looking at what's there.
Uh-huh.
So it really is more about discovery and exploration. So the more sort of willing and open you are to be completely wrong about what you're doing and to be completely right about what you're doing and just kind of exploring the whole spectrum of that,
Hmm.
the more you will basically be able to sink into your brand message, whether we use your product as the source or whether we use the time you spent with your grandmother when you were 5, it doesn't matter. Like whatever matters to you most will come out in the expression that you already have. It will already be there in whatever shape it takes, right? That makes sense. Mhm.
It does. I like that. It's nebulous. Again, I'm going to use that word again. the,
I
the
know, but
classic.
it's so steeped in self-development, this whole thing. Like you need to be willing to face a lot of stuff when you do branding. And I think anyone who's ever done branding, like, the deep kind, will agree with this that you can't get you can't get in and out in 3 weeks. It's I
Yeah.
mean, If you do, then you've probably done like 10 years of work ahead of time.
Mhm.
But the idea is, it will take time and it might take you a year to like actually get there. And you might, do a few circles around yourself and not really know what you're doing. And then all of a sudden the nebula will dissipate and you'll see
Yep.
clearly. But it's a matter of staying there and being there and just kind of sticking to the gray whateverness and just waiting for it to coalesce. There's unfortunately no easy way to get there. Or, I mean, simple, but not easy, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you what do you say to clients or prospects for that matter who believe that branding is a logo and a color scheme and that sort of thing? Do you run into that? I suspect you probably run into that once in a
Oh,
while.
yeah. Every now and then. um, so
How do you
I,
explain to those people
mm,
how important deep branding is? That's the question I'm getting at. How do you
right,
explain to them
right,
just how truly how important this is to
right.
long-term success for a business or a
Absolutely.
person? Yeah.
Yeah. The small questions, eh?
Right.
So the idea is, I always look at a logo or a color scheme or a font or whatever you choose as the visual expression of your brand as almost like the portal, the gateway. You have an entire world that you're building, and that is the sort of like small little door that people walk through to get there.
Mhm.
So it has to be unique and special and precise, I guess, in a way that, ever the designer that I am, I can't help myself. It has to be good.
Yeah.
And it has to be concise and it has to be simple. It can't be this elaborate drawing. You have to think of it as, well, isn't that me being the expert? It has to be. Let me rephrase that. I believe the best way to have a logo work for you or a color scheme is to have it really truly represent what you're doing without trying to be all of it at the same time.
Mhm.
So you can simply let a door be a door. It is so much cooler when somebody opens the door and goes, "Oh my gosh, look at what I can see now. I never expected that." Or, but that is also part of your brand language. Like, do you like being mysterious or do you like being straightforward and techy? Like, give that little flavor of it, but don't expect it to do everything for you. So I don't believe that it's almost like the macro microcosm thing. It's like a drop of the ocean is still the entire ocean in one drop. So the visual identity is still your brand all in one. It's just one drop of it. And deep branding or slow branding or whatever extensive words you can find, to make branding a little more, you know spacious,
Mhm.
um, I believe is important because it has almost nothing to do with the exact iteration of what you're doing right now with your business. um, it has to do with who you are becoming, your body of work, the kind of identity that you want to inhabit, that you want to claim, um, and who you are for your people and how you see them. And I feel like, because as I said in the beginning, the brand is a perfect vessel for you to be able to look at the entirety of the being of your business. It's like the ops being the doing, if you want to go that simplistic.
Mhm.
And your being is your brand. So everything that you portray, everything that you put out into the world, the content that you build, the relationships that you create, the clients you create, everything that you make in your
Mhm.
business is connected to your identity. It's like saying the clothes on you are are you. It's like, no, but I like wearing, cool clothes. It's
Yeah.
part of my expression and it's part of how people know me. But it's not actually who I am, obviously, because it's a piece of cloth. It's not going to be able to be representative of everything that I am, but it sure as hell is something that I chose and I want you to appreciate it. So the idea is the being of your business is your brand. And if you think of it as an entire identity, then I do think that it would be, I just feel like it would be a mistake to think that deep branding is something you can bypass and just slap something on a page. However, what I do think is that people get hung up with this idea of having to be completely clear and completely all the way worked out before they can launch it or before they can be out there.
Mhm.
I think it's the other way around. You do little bits of it. This is why I'm building branding as a practice, because just get a little, I mean, I don't know, do a trade with a friend to get a logo done if a logo is in the way. If you feel like you can't make your website live because you don't have a logo, then just I don't know, figure it out. Because doing the work and getting experience and being with your clients and actually making your body of work is what's going to build your brand. It's not, branding doesn't, it's not a one and done project at some point. So you have to be out there and you have to just choose a font. Like, don't get hung up on it. It's really always going to be the wrong one at first. It always will be. It's never going to be good enough. So this is the point where your fear gets in the way. And so just do something. But once you're at the point where you feel like, you know what, I've honed in enough,
Hmm.
sure, get a designer to do the thing exactly right the way you want it, and then iterate again, and then
Yep.
iterate again, and then keep iterating. Yeah.
I love that. Oscar Wilde once said, he said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." Which
Yes.
I think is, and that totally applies to business, right? And specifically branding for business. It's one
Absolutely.
thing to model, a business that you look at with respect, and you want to do similar things to that business, but don't copy them. Modeling and copying are two different things, and yeah, I like old Oscar's advice on that. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Absolutely. And I think that there's so much goodness, and I'm sure you know the book Stealing Like an Artist, or
Yep.
Steal Like an Artist.
Austin Kleon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I love the idea of stealing. Like,
Mhm.
I don't mind you taking my stuff and making it yours. Make it yours, make it interesting, because my stuff is probably boring to your audience. Like, I can't, and boring is probably the worst insult I can think of. Is like, make it interesting, make it yours, make it a fun version of whatever I'm creating for exactly the thing that you're producing. But go ahead, steal away. Don't get trapped in comparisonitis, but take what you see other people do and use it to your advantage. And the good thing about a brand, and this is why I do this deep branding, slow branding, spacious branding, is that the more rooted you are in yourself and the more clear you are on your values and your message and your the place that you're going, the less you're going to be derailed by all these other businesses and all these other models. And you are almost going to come to this point where you're like, actually, I don't think this is the right model at all. Like, I don't think I want to scale at all. I don't think I want a group program. Never mind. I just want to work with people one on one. I don't want to make a product. I don't, whatever the thing is, all of a sudden you might realize that the way that, like, having built your identity so strong in one place,
Hmm.
you can take other people's stuff and look at it and say, oh, I like these, five things, and I'm going to kind of shift those and take those. um but you don't get into this like weird you know swaying in the wind of what everyone else is doing, because you're just, where you're going, so you have no need.
Hmm. That's great. I think, yeah, well spoken. Um, what? Tell me a little bit about some struggles that you run into in this kind of work with, you know, in your day to day. What kind
Yeah.
of struggles do you run into with this kind of work?
um it is deeply personal,
Hmm.
so life will always come into play. There will
Hmm.
always be a moment where we have to talk about shame and fear. We have to talk about what happened in the past. We have to talk about assumptions.
You find yourself
um
life coaching sometimes in this work.
Yes, I've been called a coach more than I want to be called a coach. I've had a lot of coaching done, and I've coached a lot for sure. I just feel like there's a different approach to coaching than there is to strategy. I think strategy has a place to go, has a kind of an outcome that is almost like not set, but there's like a place that you're trying to. It's almost like the framework that I've built. Like, here's the 8 buckets. You don't need to go any further than that, and we're just going to work on building those 8 buckets. And when we're done, we're done. And then you can keep building them. And then
Very
coaching to
well
me
defined
has like a
goal.
very. Yes, precisely. And with coaching, I find there's more discovery and there's more. There's obviously, like, you have your outcomes, you have the places you want to go, but it is a lot more. Um, there's a lot more discovery where when you get on the call, there's no like mission to get your messaging straight today. It's about like, well, where you're at, what's going on, how, what's currently in your field of vision. And every coach and every strategist are on spectrums, of course. So I definitely have some coachy bits. I can't help it. And I also think that anything that is completely void of the other, it kind of misses the mark.
Hmm.
Or not doesn't miss the mark. That's probably a misnomer. I think there are phenomenal strategists who are just strategists, and there's phenomenal coaches who are just coaches. But I do think there's a blending that's happening recently, or maybe has always happened, where coaches become very consulty. And I think that can be dangerous, because I feel like, and dangerous in the sense of like, I think it endangers the sort of innate sense of self within the coachee. If they are being told what to do, then they cannot build their own expertise and their own sovereignty within them. And I feel like I feel like that should be the what's it called, the mission of a coach, I guess, is to build the other person to coach themselves out of a job, right? The idea of lifting a person, or like discovering and uncovering the things that are already within the coachee. So and then layering your own opinions on that is just, it's a little tough. But it can be helpful to have someone say, hey, I don't believe that. You might be telling yourself that, but I don't believe it, and we need to talk about that. And just today I had a call where, we bumped up against a big old fear block, and we can't do anything with that unless it's looked at. I can't message over top of that, because what's the point of messaging through something we're going to be living in their context and continue trying to live within that story and justify that story. So if we keep staying there, then your brand is going to be very limited. It's going to be very limited to the story that you've been telling yourself, and the context that you've created, the environment you've created around that. So there are definitely, and these are also the magical moments though. So I don't know if I could call them hard. I think the hard parts are when we're trying to be something that we're not. So specifically, when a coachee tries to be a good, or like a client tries to be a really good client,
Hmm.
and tries not to, disappoint me or something like that. Or when I try to be a really good strategist and I miss maybe a really important personal topic, because I want to be strategy focused and I want to make sure that they move forward in the right trajectory. So I think those are just the I guess our own individual stuff that comes in like will be in the way, no matter what kind of work you do. It's just a matter of being there open hearted, I guess, and stay with it and look at it and not be scared. you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to approach problems like that when I'm on the side of where I have the potential of being the one who's fearful or worried about criticism. I like to approach those kind of problems with what I call engaged indifference.
Okay.
So I'm engaged in the problem, but I'm
Mhm.
indifferent, right? So I'm not taking things personally and
Yes.
not focused on the fear. I think is something. I'm just throwing that out there. Something
I
that
like
helps me
that. Engaged
get
in
through stuff like
difference.
that. Engaged in different. You have to be engaged because it's important, but you have to
Yes.
be somewhat indifferent.
Like a
Not
step
necessarily,
removed.
yeah, not don't
Hmm.
be indifferent to the outcome. We want to focus on the outcome, but be indifferent to, I'm not sure, the internal stuff that's floating around in your head when someone tells you
Yeah.
that you need to change. Because if you have to change
Yes.
something, then you're not good enough in some way, right? So you have to be indifferent to
Absolutely.
that nasty little voice in your head.
Well, yes, and that gap that like pain gap that it creates, when
Totally.
your expectation of what it should be and the reality don't match, and you have
Yeah.
that like tension, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
What do you think about branding as a market differentiator, as a way to take take two companies, Microsoft and Apple. One of them has branding, and one of them charges 3 times as much for their laptops. Do you think branding has something to do with that? Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Oh, I feel like this is why is this always the example?
Because it's easy and everyone
I
understands it.
know, I know, I know. Well, the interesting thing is that um, what I find interesting about them is the identities that they create, right? If you think of them as people, you have this like very slick, black turtleneck dude. And I know that I say that, and I know that Steve Jobs wore black turtlenecks, I'm pretty sure. So I didn't mean that. I mean the like, the hipster designer that lives in the middle of a big city, that likes his gadgets just so and is a minimalist. And then you have this like techie startup dude that's just like trying all the things and is messing up all over the place, but still like gets way ahead and has really cool insights. Um, and so the cool dude might, gets stuck in a rut because he keeps trying to replicate the same thing versus, maybe the guy who's not so much attached to image might actually be onto something, might actually bring some new ideas into the world. But then the cool dude is like, well, I got better make a version of that, I guess. I don't know if you hear a little bit of petulance against my Apple products. I have too many of them, so I can't claim that I'm on the Microsoft end of things, but branding has so much to do with it. But I think that branding is like intertwined with business no matter what you do. So my perspective is always going to be there was an identity created around both of those products, I guess, or companies,
Sure.
corporations,
Yeah.
that that gets reinforced and bounced back by people who use it, and then it's like a continuous feedback loop, and that's why they have become such pillars of the thing that they do. And you can beautifully see the evolution of a brand and how, like, Apple's logo has changed so many times. That's not the point. um,
Hmm.
but the idea being it's still at its core this do you want to be at the like, what kind of person do you want to be? And with Microsoft being like, what kind of tech do you want to use? I don't know, I'm making it up, I have no idea. But it's a different kind, it's a way of being, I think, that these companies have developed and that they keep coming back to, and that's why they are being successful, also because they had to listen to their users, and they're continuously in conversation with them, also because they have to be because people use
Hmm.
them and they will tell them what they think, right? I don't know, does that answer your question?
I think so.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
Branding
we
has everything to do with it.
yeah. That's the shortened version.
I
Yeah,
know.
I think, and that's what I was getting at, is that it's if you take two otherwise very similar companies and one of them has put time and effort into deep branding and marketing communications around the branding,
Mm.
there's no question in my mind that the company that spent time on branding can charge twice as much. And it's yeah, I think it's super important.
Well, and also, I mean, it's not just the fact that they have built a brand that makes them be able to charge twice. It's the or twice as much. It's the idea, like the persona that they have built has become a person who has expensive gadgets,
Yep.
who doesn't mind, who rather have one really expensive but precisely the right kind of tool, and would rather have a series, a suite that looks similar than than have something where they might have to like jig something together and make it work. So it's like, but what I find interesting is that I'm curious about Microsoft. I want to see what they come up with because I have a feeling that innovation will come from them and not from Apple. Like, I
Hmm.
will continuously, look to Apple for my next product because now I can't go back. I have so many of them. If I go to something else, I'll have to completely change my office. Um, but I continuously look to Microsoft to sort of like build this like new awareness of new technology and new ways to be. So I feel like there might even be like a bit of a brand shift happening. I don't know. Maybe that's just in my head, but um, I don't think it's necessarily to do with basically just building a brand per se. It's building a brand that is, high ticket but really identity based.
Hmm.
Is what they knew they had to get in with the early adopters, and they're like the super cool dudes, and they made it happen, I guess, and
And
ladies.
to be
That's
clear, you're not saying that every brand needs to be high ticket with a fancy product suite. Is that right? This is where
absolutely not. Absolutely not. It is whatever value has to go both ways. If you're not happy with your business, then good luck selling it. Like,
gotcha.
I mean, selling the product. I feel like I'd rather have someone who's like scrappy and has little $20 products and has a lot of them and a big audience and has a lot of fun and does a bazillion collaborations than someone who has like it just I'd rather have them do that than try and fit themselves into the mold of, oh, I have to have a product suite like that looks the same and has similar names and whatever. I have a feeling that a lot of people get trapped in the idea that business has to look a certain way or a brand has to look a certain way. It's absolutely 1000% not the case. A brand is under the surface. Like, the big part of your brand is, like, if you look at an iceberg, it's like the underbelly. The
Yep.
top part, your visual identity, the cute things that people see, even this like weird saying that it's like your brand is what people say when you leave the room. Like, what is that? I don't. I've never known that to be true. It's like, what do you mean? It's only that? No, it's like an intrinsic identity. Like, what are you talking about? It's so much more personal than that. So the idea being the outside, the look and feel of a brand is it comes from this entire rooted underbelly, this like, root ball of really, really deep work that then, comes to the surface. And the more clear you are on your roots, the more just obvious your products become, and the more that people will just want to follow you because of your stand and where you are in the world, and you just go, anything you put out there I will buy. Like, that's the pull strategy that Apple does, right? It's the same,
Yep.
it's the exact thing. Make yourself so damn interesting. Like,
Yeah.
why not make yourself so interesting that it has absolutely nothing to do with your products and what you do? It's just that you are cool, and I want whatever you have, and that's it. And then when you're done making stuff, I'll ask you for more to make more. you know that's the kind of brand that I find interesting.
Yeah. I love that. Cool. I have in front of me here a list, well, a short list of a couple of my favorite branding quotes. Would it be all right with
Mm.
you if I read some of those out loud and got your reaction and opinion on those? Does
Oh
that sound like
gosh.
fun?
Okay, sure.
Is
Oh,
this good?
absolutely,
Okay,
100%. I might say no to all of them. I I,
that's
I
fine.
apologize ahead of time.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so this one is Philip Kotler of Kellogg.
Yep.
Philip, Philip Kotler says the art of marketing is the art of brand building. If you're not a brand, you are a commodity. Then price is everything, and the low cost producer is the only winner.
Yep. I would agree with that. I would
That's
agree
why,
with
yeah,
that.
we kind of touched upon that one earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, here's Scott Bedbury from Nike and Starbucks. Scott says, a great brand taps into emotions. Emotions drive most, if not all, of our decisions. A brand reaches out with a powerful connecting experience. It's an emotional connecting point that transcends the product itself.
I would agree with that too. And and I think that I actually have that's part of my manifesto. It's an emotional connection, and also it's the language of emotion, not
Mhm.
just emotion. It is that precise, like, that way that we connect with each other, that I think is so fascinating with a brand. But I 100% agree.
Okay. This one's long. This one is from Robert T. Blanchard of Procter and Gamble from his 1999 parting essay when he left the company.
Oh wow.
Robert T. Blanchard says, a brand is the personification of a product, service, or even an entire company. Like any person, a brand has a physical body, in quotes. In Procter and Gamble's case, the products and services it provides. Also, like a person, a brand has a name, a personality, a character, and a reputation. Like a person, you can respect, like, or even love a brand. You can think of it as a deep personal friend or merely an acquaintance. You can view it as dependable or undependable, principled or opportunistic, caring or capricious. Just as you like to be around certain people and not others, so also do you like to be with certain brands but not others. Also, like a person, a brand must mature and change its product over time. But its character and core beliefs should not change. Neither should its fundamental personality and outlook on life. People have character, so do brands. A person's character flaws form his or her integrity, the ability to deliver under pressure, the willingness to do what is right rather than what is expedient. You judge a person's character by his or her past performance and the way that he or she thinks and acts in both good times and especially in bad. The same is true of brands. It's a mouthful, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, with my thoughts in terms of, you know, the being of your business being a brand, I very much agree with, yeah, everything that was said. And I think that um there's nuance to a few of the things that he said around, whether or not how you are judged.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it is simply pass based, or, I think that the continuous inquiry that you have to have as a brand, as a person, is what is judged. I don't think it is necessarily just the past. It is how you show up in every moment of every interaction, every conversation that you have, which is why I like working on, well, what how what do you want every interaction to be like? What do you want people to leave with? And once I found out what mine is I want to leave people with a new horizon,
Mhm.
whatever that is, whether it be for themselves or just like a new thought, something they'd never thought before. And since I know that, I'm like, every call, every interaction, every email, every scenario is a win because usually there is a new horizon in there somewhere, whether it's just, if a sales call is a no, then still there's a new horizon there. I do think that just like a person, we evolve. And I also think that a brand is not just their products or how they look on the outside. I think that,
Mhm.
and not just like how they look on the outside, but like it's not just their products and not just their products evolve. I think a brand evolves within themselves, just like, and I mean, that goes back to the saying it's a person, it evolves. And I do believe that your characteristics certain character traits stay the same.
Mhm.
I'll always have a little bit of an adorable charm. I know I have that. That's just my little charm box, and I use it. But I don't think I'll ever deeply change the way that I view um, what's important in the world and how we should be in the world. So
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. I can't believe I'm agreeing to all of this, but maybe just because you pull really good quotes.
I'm pulling good ones. All right, I got one more from Sir
Hmm.
Richard Branson.
Oh
This is
yes.
loosely related to branding. Richard says the idea that business is just a numbers affair has always struck me as preposterous. For one thing, I've never been particularly good with numbers, but I think that I've done a reasonable job with feelings, and I'm convinced that it's feelings and feelings alone that account for the success of the Virgin brand in all of its myriad forms.
Hmm. Hmm. Darn. I don't agree with everything he says, but this is definitely one. Yeah, I think that the idea that it's a game or it's about numbers or it's about this every life in essence has so many iterations and so many evolutions within it. um, it's like I love the word preposterous. It's like, how could you even think that the body of work that you're building is just about gaining revenue or followers or whatever the thing is that you put numbers to, whatever you think your KPI is in terms of, I don't know, your analytics. It
Yep.
just it just seems completely ridiculous to consider that as the only measure of success. I was just talking to a friend about what success means in sort of like a bigger agency in this case. And there's always this like, well, we have to have a 15% profit margin on our every project or whatever. Um, and then at the same time though, their team was finally just like really jiving and they were really happy and everything was going so well and they're all female led and very diverse, and it's just such a cultural beauty. And I'm
Mhm.
just thinking that is such a good measure of success, that your work is working, whether or not your profit is always 15% on every project. Maybe that's the case and maybe that's a good thing to aim for, but I would much rather know that I leave my work behind with a really, really awesome team that will look back on my agency going, I love working for them. I loved being in that space, and this is what I'll take with me in life. And I still, like, honestly, to this day, I had this one moment that, like those epiphanies where you're just like, everything slows down.
Sure.
And I still remember it like it was yesterday. I don't know why, but all of our like old people in my family were together in a group for some reason. I don't know if it was afternoon tea for someone's birthday or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was outside sitting at the garden table. Everybody had like a cup of tea or coffee, and and it was just them talking, and they were all in their 80s and 90s, and neighbors too. I don't know. I think there was several of them. And when it came to like the conversation was simply, how are you doing? I'm good. I'm healthy. I can
Mhm.
walk.
Mhm.
And that was it. That was like that was the conversation. It was like, I'm good. I'm healthy. What else is there? That there's nothing else that matters in
Yeah.
this moment. Then I can walk, I can see, I can taste things still, I can get out of bed okay. And to me that was such a pivotal moment because I felt like, what else am I looking to, because at the end of our cycle, when we are complete with our work, when we're complete with our humanness, I guess, all that really matters is what's right in front of us and what's right what's within us, and how how absolutely unimportant it was that this guy was like he actually served this family, this almost like rich family. He was a yeah, like a servant, I guess. And this other guy had a hotel. Like it just, that was completely irrelevant in that moment. What kind of work he did. It was just what matters. Was health. And I know this seems unrelated, but to me, it was just this like, in the end, it comes back to humanness, no matter what the type of work is that you do. And if you leave your work knowing that you've done a really good job at being very present with who's in front of you and have been very conscious of the kind of work that you build, that it is actually a benefit to the world and not something that's going to detract from it, then you've done a good job. And it's almost like the rest is kind of just going to fade into the mist. Nobody's going to care. Even next quarter, it's completely unimportant.
Love that. I love that. I think that's well said. I think you know what you're talking about in terms of branding, at least, is branding as a way to inject humanity, right,
$100%.
into a business.
Yep.
And here's the other thing to consider for our listeners: people don't do business with companies. People do business with people, and so
Always.
that humanity is so vital
Absolutely.
to everything, to giving you purpose for waking up in the morning, right? If you don't want to just go, if you're an engineer with something at a big company, you don't want to just wake up in the morning and you're super excited to go to work for a faceless company. You want to know that there's humanity in there somewhere. um,
Absolutely. And I would even argue that it's not just injecting humanity, because the humanity's already there, whether we want it or not. So might as well discover it and see what the humanness is, and build on that, and grow from
Celebrate it.
there. Like, celebrate it.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way you can take humanity out of your business. It's just gonna happen. It's like, having a bad mental health day. Like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna pretend that you're fine forever? Like, that's not going to work. So you're going to have to find a way to be with that, or even better, work with it, and use it, and say, hey, this is actually a way of being that I don't see anyone else doing, but I would like to try to only work 2 hours a day. I can't do any other thing, but this is what I got, and I actually think that it's really beneficial to work less, for example. um,
Mhm.
there's so many ways we can do work. It's just kind of silly to think that it's like, like you said, like Oscar Wilde's quote. It goes into like, there's so many people, there's so many businesses, there's so many types of ways of doing things, and they're being new things are being invented every day. Is it like 500,000 websites going live every day on the globe, or a quarter of a million? I don't
That
know,
sounds
but it's a
about right.
ridiculous amount. It's a ridiculous amount. So just imagine, all of those people have individual ideas, and they're bringing them out into the world.
Mhm.
That's, I mean, I'm not trying, I'm trying not to like feel too small in that comparison. Like, who am I? But the idea being like, you might as well be you, right? You might as well do your thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Um, That's great. Alice, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're kind of coming up on our time here, and I think this would be a great spot to end. But I do have one more question for you. What, is that all right? Do you have time for one more?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What kind of like advice around branding would you have for our listeners? We got a lot of coaches as listeners,
Mhm.
coaches, consultants, course creators, those kind of types. What
Mhm.
advice would you have for them if they're just getting started with this? If they've got the logo, maybe they've got the font picked out, maybe they've got a nice color scheme that works really well, that fits their personality. How can they dig deeper? How can they do some of this deep work?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wait for my product? No. um, I truly believe that once you're in the work, do the work, be present with it, listen to your people, and listen to their words, record their words, get testimonials, understand them properly, and believe yourself. You
Mhm.
don't have to listen to everyone else. You don't have to listen to 15 podcasts a day. I'm sorry. You just, it is, there's a limit to how much I feel your voice gets diluted by other people's voices. So be steady in your path, even if you don't know quite yet where it's going to lead you, because I promise that path will have a lot more sort of like learning and grounding, identity building in it than jumping around into a million different, other pots that you see lying around. So the biggest thing is, um, don't believe everything you hear. It's not at all that hard. You just have to be present. But also, I think the biggest lesson for me that I wish I had known earlier was identify the gap that you think you have. So if you feel like, oh, I need to hire this expert because I'm losing my mind, I don't know what I'm doing in my business, there's like so many things, or I need a new website, so I need to like immediately hire someone, or I need a copywriter, whatever you think you need,
Mhm.
look at where that is coming from, and I promise you, 99% of the time, it will be not the exact gap that you're trying to fill. It will probably be like, I'm scared I'm not going to look good at the new networking conference on Friday, whatever. And so I need to now, I don't know, do this like elaborate thing, or I need to immediately hire a coach because I don't know anything about business and therefore somebody must tell me how it works. Um, Probably it has to do with something else. So
Mhm.
if you know what the gap is, then you can better identify it. And I had this exact moment myself just a couple weeks ago, because this year I'm making my business as accessible as possible in every way. So making my website accessible, making my services, my contracts accessible, not just for, disabilities, but also, or persons with disabilities, but also for neurodivergencies and like any possible way that, can get in the way of doing work with me. Um, just to like lower those barriers as much as possible and to think of sort of minorities within minorities. And I immediately was completely overwhelmed with the entirety of the, like, just think of it. Like, you have to change your colors, you have to change your design, you have to change, like, there's so many millions of things you have to do. Immediately what my brain went to, like, I need a priority list. I don't know what's most important. I don't know where to go. There's just like lists and lists I can find on Google, and I'm driving myself nuts. And I like was burning out. I could feel I felt like my body was disintegrating with all the stress. And then I was like, okay, I got to hire someone. I got to just have someone tell me what to do and like give me a list of like first steps. So I went on a sales call with a company that was doing accessibility consulting, and I got on a call with them, and it was really great. And they gave me some, good pointers that I didn't know I had to consider, so my list got longer. um, and and then in the end I was like, all right, well, I'm looking forward to the proposal. And then once I got the proposal, it was quite outside my budget, which is one thing that made me stop, because I do think that we need to hold to our budgets, even though it looks a lot. There will be the psychological trickery of saying you're not into your own transformation if you don't pay $10,000 for a weekend retreat in San Diego. And I promise you that is not the truth. If you have to sell your house in order to do a coaching program, it ain't worth it. Um, and it's most likely not actually going to give you the results you need. So I immediately was stopped by that. But also, I noticed, like, what am I doing here? Like, why do I, like, all of a sudden I had all these like ideas of how to move forward. And I'm like, wait, I actually don't need someone to tell me what to do. I actually know, like, there's lists everywhere. So what the heck is the problem? And I realized I just wanted it to be done tomorrow. I had a time issue. I was stressed that I wasn't having it done today because I wanted it to be in my plan for the year. It was listed as February and it was already March, and I was too late already.
Mhm.
So I'm like, you know what? It's a time problem. So I just shifted my goal to a yearly goal instead of a monthly goal, which was ridiculous anyway. But I just shifted it to a year and said no thank you to the experts, even though it was great. And they left me with a couple more tips, which was also fantastic. And now I'm just taking it slowly and, made a new project. And all of a sudden I got to relax again and say, hey, I'm still in alignment with my values. I absolutely am going to have an accessible business. It's just not going to be in March. It's going to
Yeah.
be maybe in December. And probably I'll never get there. But, so the gap that I like, I just feel like the gap that we have is 100%, well, 99% of the time, not the gap that we think it is.
Perfect is the enemy of progress, and
Oh,
you're
and that.
and you're
Yes,
making you're making progress now. You've set up reasonable goals
absolutely.
that don't paralyze you.
Exactly. And I think the paralysis and that like that hustle mentality and that the culture of like you need to figure everything out right now, is what's getting us into this mess. And it is like a corporate idea. It's not like we can build any business we want. We're now online. We don't need corporate to tell us how to do things. So we might as well invent new rules like, hey, projects take a year. I don't know, make it whatever you want to make it.
That's great. Alice, this has been a lot of fun for me. Do you have
Yeah.
anything that you would like to pitch or promote? And where can our listeners meet you online?
I can be found at alicekarolina.com with a K. That is where I sell my services. So anyone who's interested in that, most welcome to book a call with me to see if we're a fit. And then I do run the Ethical Move, or let's say I'm the founder of it. I have a lot of people running it with me now. And we are always looking for people willing to make their marketing ethical and pledge to the ethical move. So anyone who wants to do that and have a look at what ethical marketing can be like, or even get involved and write an article or be part of the conversation, we're at theethicalmove.org. And so those are my two big orbits. And I'm always happy to find people through DMs, or I'm in the online space as much as I can in as many places as possible. So anyone who wants to reach out, I'm always available.
Awesome. Alice Karolina, Karolina with a K. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
That's for people who are
Thank you.
listening to it on a podcast and not watching it on YouTube.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds good. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank
Really
you so
good.
much. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.